Hi, I'm Selkie, and this is Kleiopetra,
Hi.
and welcome to Spouting History. Being a history student, there's some things that I know way too much about that are basically useless in everyday conversation. However, I need to get it out of my system, so you and you are going to have to listen to me talk about them forever and ever and ever. And one of those things that I'm really into is embroidery. So today we're going to examine one of the oldest surviving pieces of embroidery history that we still have today from 1066. Well, the events pictured took place in 1066. The embroidery itself was probably done about 20 years later. Either way, it's called the Bayeux Tapestry, and it's about the Battle of Hastings in England between the Normans and the Anglo-Saxons. Let's get into it. Embroidery is one of humanity's oldest pastimes, but the problem is, with archaeological evidence, it's really hard for cloth to be well preserved. There has to be very specific conditions and very specific climates in which it can be preserved. It's a miracle we have as many specimens to look at as we even do.
Nerd.
Shut up. Why are you so rude today? If you're not nice, you're gonna go in the closet again. One of the best preserved pieces of embroidery that we have to this day is called the Bayeux Tapestry, although tapestry is a misnomer. It's actually an embroidery. A tapestry is when threads are woven together to make a picture, whereas an embroidery is where a needle is used to basically punch holes and slide thread through fabric that's already made. Whole books have been written about this entire embroidery, so I can't get into all of it, but boy howdy will we be getting into some of it. 224 feet long and 20 inches wide, the Bayeux Tapestry is a huge piece telling the story of the Battle of Hastings and the conditions that led up to it. John D. Anderson for the Classical Journal describes it as, quote, a valuable document for the study of medieval weapons, warfare, architecture, costumes, folklore, and attitudes of the time period, unquote. It's thoughtful in its design, and it had to be. The tapestry was depicting one of the most important events in modern history at the time, and the artist had to carefully plan it. Anderson posits that the creator was a Norman, meaning they were part of the French group whose conquest of England the tapestry depicts. The winners are often the ones that write history, after all, and this is incredibly true of the tapestry. A little note here. Even though I said that it's called a tapestry,
Okay.
when it's actually an embroidery, it's going to continue to be referred to in this video as a tapestry.
Alright, I'm tracking.
Well, just because it makes it easier for people to understand what I'm talking about. If it's been called the Bayeux Tapestry for so long, whether or not it's a tapestry doesn't matter, because if I say the Bayeux embroidery, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. So, even though it's the incorrect name, we're going to continue to call it the Bayeux Tapestry.
What actually happened leading up to the Battle of Hastings? What is the Battle of Hastings, for that matter?
Well, let's get into it. The tapestry depicts the conquest of England by the aptly named William the Conqueror, Duke of Normandy. But on a deeper level, it's a story of betrayal, family ties, exile, and violence. The dying King of England, Edward the Confessor, tells his brother-in-law Harold to tell William, Duke of Normandy, he has declared him heir to the throne, as William and Edward were distant cousins.
Why did he bring so many people with him?
He's a royal, and I think he would need his attendants. Also, he needed to have a way to show some kind of force if he for some reason was met with opposition on his way to William, which he ended up being. One of William's vassals, a guy named, well, Lord Guy, found Harold upon his shores, and since he was trespassing, arrested him. However, Harold was able to get a message to William about that he was there, and William, knowing who he was, offered his release. The two meet, and Harold tells William about his heirdom, and then promptly leaves. By the time the king actually dies, instead of William being crowned, the lords of the realm voted Harold to be king, other than William. However, once this message gets to William, he puts up a fight. Harold thought he had a better claim to the throne as the king's brother-in-law, rather than William, who was a distant cousin, and a Norman at that.
Wait, what is a Norman? We never really went over that.
Let's talk about Anglo-Saxons first. See, England at the time was controlled by the Anglo-Saxons, a tribe of Germanic peoples, whereas the Normans were descendants of Vikings, who had made a deal with the King of France back in the 9th and 10th centuries, in order to give them a couple parts of his land. After a couple hundred years of intermarriage and cultural mixing with the native French, they created a new ethnic group called the Normans. The idea that Edward would name this foreigner, who was so distantly related, his heir over Harold, was crazy to him. William, after hearing about Harold's betrayal, decides to pay this backstabber a visit on a September night in 1066. Well, him and a couple hundred ships with his best men, 7,000 Norman soldiers to be exact. The tapestry itself has 626 unique characters pictured, along with 202 horses. Well, I would assume they had some training. William had some delays, but regrouped in Saint-Valery-sur-Saint, Saint-Valery-sur-Saint, Saint-Valery-sur-Saint. I don't speak French.
Duh.
I'm sorry. William had some delays, but regrouped in Saint-Valery-sur-Saint and set sail from there, arriving in Pevensey, England. He took the towns of Pevensey and Hastings, and there they awaited their enemy. While they awaited their enemy, William enacted what's called a scorched earth policy, meaning any and all resources that the opposition could use, he absolutely destroyed. This is one of the great examples of how the tapestry can be a really good resource for us to look back at military history and the traditions that were used therein. Harold got wind of their arrival, and his troops also mustered after returning from defeating northern armies who had also tried to stake a claim to the throne. On October 14th, 1066, the Norman and Anglo-Saxon armies met at Hastings, and the Normans emerged victorious after a long and hard battle. The Anglo-Saxons, despite having a slight advantage being on home turf, had the disadvantage in that they were already exhausted from fighting off northern invaders. Harold is shot in the eye with an arrow, and justice is served. He and his brothers are all killed, and while we're missing the last couple of scenes of the embroidery, we can assume that they picture the Anglo-Saxons fleeing after the battle. The scenes in the Bayeux Tapestry are embroidered with wool thread on linen cloth. The plants used to dye the wool are dyer's woad, madder, and dyer's rocket, or weld. Woad, a plant common in Europe, is used to produce indigotine, which produces the shades of blue in this piece. The indigotine did not properly soak into the entirety of the wool used, so some of the blues are kind of faded. However, this was not the problem with the other two colors. I did not have a orange watercolor pencil, so we're just using what we've got. Maybe this is kind of orangey. Let's see. Yeah, not really. It's more of a yellow, but it was used to make the shades of red and pink. Dyer's rocket or weld was used to make the shades of yellow and other shades of brown. And then when we mix some of these colors together is how we get colors like more of an orange. Or maybe more an indigo, purpley color. And then also maybe a green.
Hey, my hair is made of wool yarn.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. The piece itself was probably commissioned by Bishop Odo, William the Conqueror's half-brother, to embellish his newly built cathedral in Bayeux in 1077. That's where it sat in storage, only mentioned in the 1476 inventory of the cathedral's belongings and relics. The Bayeux Museum tells us that, quote, after the Revolution, meaning the French Revolution, in 1794, the Arts Commission for the Bayeux district seized it, the tapestry, on behalf of the nation, therefore ensuring it was protected. According to a well-established local tradition, it was almost cut up in 1972 to make covers for soldiers' carts, but luckily was saved by a local lawyer named Léonard Lembier Le Forestier.
That would have been horrible if they cut it up.
Yes, exactly, Cleo. I would agree. It would be a horrible loss if we were never able to see this tapestry. It tells us so much about history and what it was like for soldiers, kings, and conquest back then.
You keep saying that, though, but what does the tapestry tell us about it?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's get into it. For starters, we can easily tell the Normans apart from the Anglo-Saxons, as the artist gave the Anglo-Saxons long hair and mustaches, while the Normans have short hair and are clean-shaven, giving us insight into the way each ethnic group wore their hair. We also have the depictions of the couched lance being used in the armies of the Normans, a weapon that was, quote, well attested by the time of the First Crusade. The first example of this new fighting style was depicted in the Bayeux Tapestry. Obviously, there are depictions of the kind of armor that's used, called ringmail rather than chainmail, because the rings were so large. The tapestry also shows us pictures of the ships, and in the case of William the Conqueror's boats, how they were built. It also shows us architecture and, like I said earlier, the kind of scorched earth policy warfare that William waged, leaving destruction in his wake, evidenced by the scene of a building being burnt. To summarize, the Bayeux Tapestry is on display, still in Bayeux, Normandy, France, where you can go see it. I really wish I could go see it, honestly, like that would be so cool. But unfortunately, I cannot, so I just have to look at the really awesome version that they have on their website through the museum that you can actually click through each and every scene and you can read the Latin text yourself. But it's a really great historical document for both text, as I said, in Latin, but also visual depictions of what culture was like for both the Anglo-Saxons and the Normans at the time. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye!
Bye!